It's one of my favorite songs, Carmen. That was perfect. Welcome back. All right, so for the next 45 minutes, we're going to do a little bit of a hodgepodge of a few things. We're going to have some poetry that's read, some pieces of literature. We have a special guest who will be coming in just a bit. I wanted to open by asking all of you to chime in, the first 5 people who raised their hands. And Carmen and Ivory and Luke, I'm going to rely on you to kind of keep an eye of where those hands are and call those individuals. I was looking in the chat, and as we're talking about hope, and it's such an important concept, it's what will carry us through, it's what will sustain us, it's what will energize us. David ended the last segment by asking 5 of us who are educators, and we know there are many more of you who are educators, to talk about how we teach hope. And in the process of you asking that, there are several people who put in the chat
either you didn't stick with the movie last night. You wouldn't know why.
Definitions about right now. Let's make sure we're muted. Okay. Quotes about hope or definitions about hope? See, I haven't even asked the question yet, and we have Shanita's hand up.
Shanita's already ready to go. Okay. Shanita's ready to go. Okay.
This is the energy that we need. This is so good. So here's the question. And I know Shanita's hand's going to remain up even as I ask it. Either how do you define hope? So you personally, not the Webster's Dictionary, how do you define hope? Or, so 2 things. Number 1, how do you define hope? Or share with us a quote that you love about hope. First 5 people. So Shanita's already done. All right. All right. We have Karen is next. 3 more. You got to put your hands up. Huh? What? Oh. I have my daughter in the room. She's not our special guest, but she's very special. So we have Shanita, Karen. All right, let's start with Shanita while the others are waiting. Oh, I see some people throwing it in the chat. So we'll go through Shanita, Karen, and then we'll read the ones in the chat out loud. All right, you're up, Shanita. You can unmic and turn your video on if you can.
I'm kind of doing a double duty here, so I'm not able to turn my camera on, but know that I will be on for the duration of the 24 hours. How I define hope, and I kind of sent a little message in the chat, for me is the ability to encourage someone to move past their most difficult moments in spite of. A lot of time, and I've from children to adults, many people get distressed or discouraged about things, but it's that ability to still hold up, hold strong in spite of those emotions that you're feeling and pushing past it. So being able to either be a part of that or taking it on for myself, that's the way I define hope, is being able to stand in the midst of that adversity and pushing forward past those things.
Oh, I love how your definition of hope has resilience in there, perseverance. It's beautiful. Shanita is one of our educator ambassadors I talked about earlier with the Institute. She traveled with us on the Truth and Purpose Learning Experience. She's knocked on doors in Pennsylvania, in Virginia. Were you in Nevada too, I think, Shanita, and some other places?
Yeah, the Nevada too.
That's awesome. And now she is also implementing all kinds of incredible things in her local school district in Florida. So we can just imagine some of the challenges that she's facing, and she's persevering. So Shanita embodies hope. Thank you very, very much for that. All right, Karen Austin, you are up next, and then I see Vivian.
I think for hope, it's something that Dr. Leonard mentioned, is that everything's temporary. So no matter what we're going through, it's all temporary. Life is temporary. And I think that the other part of that provides hope for me personally is that I believe that the most salient characteristic of human beings is the ability to change. So knowing that as a society, I believe that we can also change. So the combination of knowing things are temporary and the ability to change, I think it's kind of like a recipe for hope. You add those 2 things together and you can get hope.
That's right. It makes me think of the dialogue can break down prejudice, that understanding of things can change, that it's not static, because if we believe it won't change, then we have no hope for anything. So that's beautiful. Thank you, Karen.
Yes. Thanks.
I want to say something about that, Terry. The trips that we do, the learning tours that we do to the South, started back in 2014 for us. And they were inspired by John Lewis, the great American hero and congressman, because he started a trip for members of Congress to go to Selma once a year on the weekend that honors Bloody Sunday. He started what he called a faith and politics pilgrimage for members of Congress. And he told a story during those trips that then NPR did a story about. And so it's chronicled in an NPR interview with John Lewis about people changing. And in 1961 on the Freedom Rides, John Lewis was part of the original group, the CO, as Dr. Lancia referred to it, the core group. And they started in Washington, D.C., did a little bit of a bus ride through Washington, D.C., then down south through Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina. And they weren't met by violence until they got to South Carolina, to Rock Hill, South Carolina. And in Rock Hill, when they came off the bus, because they were always seeking to integrate or desegregate the bus terminals. When they came off the bus, they were met by a mob, not as bad as the mob in Montgomery, Alabama, but enough. And they had baseball bats, white men. And Lewis was beaten up and he had ribs broken, deeply injured, had to go into the Black community and get some medical help, and actually left the Freedom Rides, came back when the Nashville group came back into being about a week and a half later. Lewis had that experience, and like 50 years later, he had an appointment with somebody who came to his DC office, his Washington DC office, and it was an older white gentleman. And the white man said, Congressman Lewis, I came today to tell you that I was the man who hit you with the bat. I was the man. I was the one, and I'm really sorry, and I'm here to apologize. And Lewis said, thank you so much. I mean, this is what nonviolence and the hope to change the world is all about. And the man said, I brought my son with me because I wanted him to see me taking ownership and accountability, and also modeling the values that I believe now. And Lewis and the man and the son cried together and prayed together. And Lewis would tell the story on the pilgrimage trips, the congressional pilgrimage trips, and he would say, people can change. People can change. Even when it doesn't feel like they can, we have to give them the chance.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, David. It reminds me of the picture of Elizabeth Eckford, who was one of the Little Rock Nine. And it's the famous picture where in 1957, she gets separated from the rest of the group and she's walking through the crowd. She's 15 years old, holding her books, and you see women behind her screaming at her. And finally, somebody came out of the crowd, pulled her out, and got her on the bus. But the woman who you see most front and center screaming at her, in later years, they became friends with each other. It's the same kind of commentary and idea that we can change people's hearts. We can, and we can change their minds along with that. And when we can't, we legislate the hell out of their ability to not harm us. Before I get to Vivian Bennett, Susan Gilroy King, you dropped in the chat, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul. Beautiful. How about you, Vivian?
Hi. So Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust refugee who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote something that's really important to him, I think. He said, everything be taken man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, choose one's own way. That's really, relevant. That's just come before, personally find it very, very hard a lot of the time to choose hope. I find it really hard. I can say it, but to feel it, to really believe it inside myself, it's hard, and it's hard under the senses that we're that we're seeing over the past week. Nonetheless, I think that that's really, really important. We do have no one can take away from us the freedom to how we respond, how we feel, how we think about something, what we do within whatever the constraints are of a situation. We still can have own feeling, and that could be hope.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to read something, and if there are a couple of other people who would like to unmic, please raise your hand and we'll have time for that. I'm going to read what Rachel Nichols said, then I have a poem to read you. I always say that hope is my favorite word. Once a student asked me, why do you like that word? It's so common. We eventually agreed that it's what makes the word even more special, that it's for everyone. Let's see, it just lost it because you guys are great. Now you're putting a bunch of stuff in the chat and I'm losing track of where we are. Let's see. Okay, that is for everyone. And he said, we can share it. Oh, we can share hope. That's so beautiful. When you lead by example, your example becomes infectious. And so that idea of sharing hope, because if you are somebody who has hope, if your brand is hope, then those around you see that and understand that. But it is something that then will encourage them to understand why they should have hope and make them work harder to gain that just and inclusive democracy. I'm going to place this poem in context. So this is the book that I mentioned just a little bit ago, and you see a cute little girl on the front who's writing. She's in a freedom school in 1964 in Mississippi. The name of the book is To Write in the Light of Freedom, the Newspapers of the 1964 Mississippi Freedom Schools by William Sturkey and John Hale. My daughter actually introduced me to this book. And to give 1964 Mississippi a little bit of context, historically, Mississippi has been seen as the worst of the worst. There are signs from the modern civil rights movement that read, thank God for Mississippi, or North Carolina would be at the bottom. Mississippi was considered the space that was impenetrable, where people were fearful, where lynchings were at the highest, where racial terror went unchecked in a way that was worse than any other space in the South. It is the place where Emmett Till was brutally murdered. In 1964, in June 21st, 1964, that's when the 3 civil rights workers were killed. James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, and their bodies were found 6 weeks later. And so these freedom schools were part of Freedom Summer, and they had a multi-tier approach to what they were going to do in Freedom Summer. They were going to register people to vote. They were going to create schools to supplement the terrible education that Black children were receiving in the state. They were going to create the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which would have put forth Fannie Lou Hamer and all of her glory, which we will talk about at some point during our 24 hours. And so this book is a collection of poems and thoughts from the children who were at the Freedom Summer School. Now you think about not just Jim Crow, but rampant racial violence. And when the Freedom Summers workers came, over 1,000 of them from all over the country, if you read in the archives, like I love to do, what you find is that there was an incredible uptick of violence in the state, that there were children who were given poisoned candy by white racists because they wanted the quote unquote agitators to go, and one of those children died, that there were people who were killed across the state. When they were looking for the bodies of the 3 civil rights workers, they found 9 other Black men no one had been looking for from the FBI. This is the context of Mississippi in 1964. And yet, a little girl, a little Black girl, was able to write a poem called Hope, that despite what's happening around her, she had hope for better days. And this is what it said. Sometimes I wonder if we are alone, if there is no one who will help us along. We have fought and waited for freedom to appear, but we are not alone, and our hearts are not filled with fear. Somewhere I know there are people who care. Freedom was meant for everyone, as it can only be. The day that we get freedom, a new life will begin. Our hearts will be joyful and with rapture will spin. When we find freedom, we will not let it go. And day by day, our struggle will grow. We can't always tell what happened in the past, but when we get freedom, we know it will last. But when will freedom be here at our side? Within its our rights, our longing to bide. Yes, we've struggled and waited for freedom to appear, but still we are not alone and our hearts are not filled with fear. Marionette Travis. I'm so struck by that and by this little girl who was able to write this in the midst of all of this terror. Lily Mathis, you have your hand up. Do you want to unmic and tell us your definition of fear? I mean, not of fear, of hope, the antithesis of fear. All right, Lily. All right. She's not here. While we're waiting, go
She
ahead.
does. Just give her 1
She said,
second.
give me 1 second.
Oh, she did. Okay, I didn't see that. I'm so sorry.
Terry, so that was a 12-year-old girl, did you say?
It doesn't say the age, but they are typically elementary school children. Yeah. Or yeah, Ani is here. She's elementary or middle school. Ani's my daughter who gave me the book and has dog-eared almost every page in here in her book.
I just think of Milk's statement, Harvey Milk's, you have to give the people hope. To me, that's like the definition of lead. Like it's not the only thing, but it is an essential component of leadership.
Absolutely. You're right.
Okay,
Rachel.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so 1 second. I had to go back into Zoom. Okay, I guess for me, I feel like hope is like, it's like a community. It's like, I don't know. I see it as like the heartbeat of the community. Like it's the momentum that propels us forward. And I feel like for me, like I feel like it's been very easy to lose hope. And I know a lot of my friends too, like it's hard, especially when people are trying to beat you down. But I think one thing we've all been able to learn from one another is that as long as one person has hope, it's infectious and it's able to kind of re-inspire others to hope. And ultimately, without hope, we have nothing to work for. Like it's essential to every movement and every ounce of progress that we've made. So yeah, I think it's really just about community and kind of the momentum.
Lily, have you been part of Action Academy, or are you going to be, or something?
Yeah, I'm currently a part of Action Academy, which I learned about from my teachers. I went to Bellevue High School, and I just graduated, so I'm in that right now.
Awesome. Because we're here to recruit you if you're not. Okay, that's what
I've been recruited by a lot of people. So
awesome.
When we talk about hope, and Arlene, we'll go to you for your definition, but I want to come back to Lily and that generation and the kind of hope that they inspire. So Arlene, thanks for joining us. What's your definition? Oh, you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, these 3.5 hours have been really hopeful. I want to thank you. So I taught a book and I put this quote up there, Rebecca Solnit's Hope in the Dark, and I'm going to quote from her. Hope is not a lottery ticket you can sit on the sofa and clutch feeling lucky. It is an axe you break down doors with in an emergency. Hope should shove you out the door because it will take everything you have to steer the future away from endless war, from the annihilation of the earth's treasures and the grinding down of the poor and marginal. To hope is to give yourself to the future, and that commitment to the future is what makes the present inhabitable.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Arlene. I see some applause for that, for sharing that. We appreciate it.
That's Rebecca Solnit, and her book, Hope in the Dark, The Untold History of People Power, is a good one to read.
Hope in the Dark. All right. We will drop that in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing that.
No, thanks for doing this.
So, and Bill, you're asking what's the name of the book that my daughter gave us? It's To Write in the Light of Freedom. So we'll drop that in there too. This is the daughter who gave it to us. So we're talking about hope and inspiration. The big thing that gives me hope is this generation. She, like Lily, she was a graduate of Action Academy. Then she came back, what, twice as a team lead? What's your name?
Ani. My name's Ani. Hello.
So cute, my little Ani. She came back as a team lead, and then she knocked on doors for CP. What states have you knocked on doors?
Arizona, Texas. I led a trip in Texas. We're about to do Maryland.
Where'd you spend your 20th birthday? So she's a
Oh.
twin. I have identical twins and a 14-year-old. And so they've never spent a birthday apart until their 20th birthday. And you chose to spend that birthday knocking on doors.
Yeah, in Wisconsin. Yeah.
Which candidate were you
Very
knocking
fun.
for?
Mandela Barnes and the Wisdoms. So we did like a 2-week trip, and half of it was for the Wisdoms, and then half was for Mandela Barnes. Very fun. Had a great time. I got a little fork for my birthday. It was great. Charles will remember.
I mean, that's what gives me hope. I'm so
Yeah.
proud, obviously, which is why I have her here. But we have such incredible young people in Common Power. I mean, Ani was with Common Power before I was, a couple of years before I was. So the young people who come through there are our next generation of leaders. She's the one telling me about this book. She's a senior at NYU. What's your major?
Africana Studies and History minor. Have to do a little Dr. Scott in there.
What do you want to do?
And I want to be a civil rights attorney, hopefully, at some point. Some EJI type things.
Yes.
We'll see.
So we are that's the thing that gives me hope, is the next generation. And I know right now a lot of people are coming down on this generation and saying, because of some of the comments around whether or not they're going to vote, but I say we don't lose hope on that, because I know you're going to vote, your friends are voting. You know, I think sometimes what do you think I think we overstate the idea of the aloofness of your generation. What I
Yeah.
see is you guys are engaged.
A lot of it is not to discount, but a lot of it is talk.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people who like say all these things and then are gonna end up voting. So as long as we keep instilling this notion and getting into our minds that we do need to vote, I think we will pull out at the polls.
That's right.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
hope.
My little sweet baby.
Yeah.
Good job, Ani. David, did you want to jump in? We're going to get our special guest in a second.
Ani, how do you define hope, Ani?
Here, you want to sit?
I
there?
can, no, it's okay, you're fine. It's
Okay.
your seat, yeah.
All right.
I define hope in a lot of different ways. It's not really like to me, hope is not linear. So you can say as many words as you want in my head that like always going, but I think it's just, it's a feeling, it's a way of living. It's a way getting up every day and doing one good thing in the hope of having something change in our world. Just I think hope is really just how you live your life, and it's just looking to the future as a place that won't destroy you, but instead as a place that you can help to fix and change. Yeah, that's
Hey, little sweetie.
Someone had sent me a direct message in here and said, I had said that hope is an essential part of leadership. And this person said, okay, if that's the case, then how come Trump's message is so attractive to lots of people? Here's how I want to, and I said, if you want to talk about that, I would be interested to hear about it. So I do want to respond to that and say that I think that hope is an essential part of ethical leadership. I think that Trump doesn't offer ethical leadership. So the word that I didn't have in my earlier piece was ethical leadership. And the reason I didn't have it there is because, candidly, I take that for granted as what good leadership is, right? Ethical leadership should be good. A good leadership should be leadership that attempts to make us a better world, to bring people more together, to be more inclusive, to be genuinely equitable. There's undoubtedly. And whoa, can Terry and I take you through the litany of the people who have demonstrated unethical, damaging, hateful, hurtful leadership throughout world history, but just in the United States have done this over and over and over again. And Trump is the latest example of that. So the reality in when Terry talks about truth and purpose and our commitment to truth, it isn't truth versus non-truth. That isn't the way the world works. It isn't truth versus non-truth. Non-truth just assumes that the truth isn't being articulated. No, it's actually truth versus the opposite of truth, which is a lot of different things, but it's certainly hurt and damage and lies and pain. And so there is a battle, whether you see it spiritually or cosmically or whatever, but there is clearly a battle between people that are seeking to do right and people who are seeking their own gain without care about others. And so Trump happens to fall into that camp. And for people who follow him and subscribe to him, I personally believe that many of them have grievances and want to hurt others in certain ways. That is their goal in this moment in time. It isn't a goal that I personally understand, but it would be, that is what I believe where they're at. So ethical leadership requires hope, as I would think about it. I don't think that all leaders offer it. And in fact, I'm working hard against one who doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that, David. Ethical leadership. I understand what you're saying. It seems that good leadership, the ethical is silent, that we just understand leadership itself should entail that. But right, we have to flesh it out. Ethical leadership. That's perfect. Well stated. There's a piece that I want to read that kind of speaks to what you were saying about waking up and kind of a lifestyle choice. And that just works, I think, well with this. Robin G. Kelley is a scholar. And then while I read this, I think if you could go get our special guest, that would be lovely. Oh, okay, cool. And thank you. David knows who that is. Robin G. Kelley is a scholar who's written widely, a political scientist, historian. I forget what his formal training is, but he wrote in the beginning of a book, he talked about his mother and how she trained him to have hope and inspiration and see the world in a very particular way. And I read this many, many years ago, and I have given it to my students repeatedly at the end of the semester to leave them with this so that they can think about the world that they want to create. I won't read all of it, but I'm going to read a part of it. And so Robin G. Kelley, again, it's called Freedom Dreams is the book. And this is from his introduction, When History Sleeps, a Beginning. My mother has a tendency to dream out loud. I think it has something to do with her regular morning meditation. In the quiet darkness of her bedroom, her third eye opens onto a new world. A beautiful light-filled place as peaceful as her state of mind. She never had to utter a word to describe her inner peace. Like morning sunlight, it radiated out to everyone in her presence. My mother knows this, which is why for the past 2 decades, she's taken the name Ananda, bliss. Her other 2 eyes never let her forget where we lived. The cops, drug dealers, social workers, the rusty tap water, roaches and rodents, the urine-scented hallways, and the piles of garbage were constant reminders that our world began and ended at a battered Harlem, Washington Heights tenement apartment on 157th in Amsterdam. We were a family of caretakers who inherited this earth. We were expected to help any living creature in need, even if that meant giving up our last piece of bread. Strange, needy people always passed through our house, occasionally staying for long stretches of time. My mother once helped me bring home a New York City pigeon with a broken leg in a failed attempt to nurse her back to health. We were expected to stand apart from the crowd and befriend the misfits, to embrace the kids who stuttered, smelled bad, or had holes in their clothes. She simply wanted us to live through our third eyes, to see life as possibility. I'm going to say that again, to live through our third eyes, to see life as possibility. She wanted us to imagine a world free of patriarchy, a world where gender and sexual relations could be reconstructed. She wanted us to see the poetic and the prophetic in the richness of our daily lives. So with her eyes wide open, my mother dreamed and dreamed some more, describing what life could be for us. She dreamed of land, a spacious house, fresh air, organic food, and endless meadows without boundaries, free of evil and violence, free of toxins and environmental hazards, free of poverty, racism, and sexism, just free. She convinced my siblings and me that change is possible and that we didn't have to be stuck there forever. I love this piece. She encouraged them to see the world as possibility, to see life through their third eye. Never stop dreaming about what that possibility can be. Never stop constructing what that possibility is through your third eye. I've told my daughters that repeatedly, see the world through your third eye. See life as possibility.
Harry, what do you mean by a third eye? What do you mean?
That's our imagination. That's our hope. If we're going to define the third eye, it's the space that is not limited by the constructs of our environment. It's a space that's not limited by convention. It's a space that's not limited by what others tell us it's supposed to be, by negativity, by those who are seeking to tell us that we can't create a movement, by those who are seeking to tell us that we can't create change. Our third eye is the space where we reserve the right to see utopia, where we reserve the right to see a world that is free of prejudice, that is free of racism, that is free of sexism, that is free of all of the isms and things that seek to divide us and tear us down. Some people say that's too grand of a notion, but it is not. I will die seeing the world through my third eye, always imagining what we can have, because that's how we work toward change and create change around us.